My name is Willie James Johnson. I do have a nickname that everybody know me by, and that's Stinky Johnson. And through the years, I've acquired a couple other nicknames that people know me by, such as Chili, Willie, and Pops. I know you're probably wondering where those names came from. Well, they came from the time I was in the Navy. As being Chili Willie, everybody said I was cool. I didn't get all hyped up when things wasn't right or when they was good, especially playing basketball. And Pops came when I was a single parent in Hawaii, and I had my oldest son, William Keys, with me. I took him to Hawaii, and that's how I got those names. And my household consisted of my mother, Mabel Carlina Johnson, and she's from Oxford, Mississippi. And she was born November 3rd, 1914. And also my dad, Jim, better known as Jim, his name is James Johnson. He's from Guntown, Mississippi. And we was raised in New Albany, in the city. I don't remember living in the county except for weekends with my cousins. And my first address that I remember was down on 2nd Street off of Oak Street. And my oldest brother, George Lee Cannon, he's my oldest brother. And he became a trucker. And he didn't finish school, but he left home at an early age, as far as I can remember. He said he used to change our diapers, but I don't remember. We always had a thing about that. He said he used to change our diapers, but I don't remember. And then I have my next oldest brother is Robert Augusta Johnson, better known as Bob Johnson of the Mosley Johnson Band. Also, he was born in March 3rd, 1946, and then me, born January 18th, 1949. And then my younger brother, Miles Johnson, that is spelled M-I-L-E-S. And he's the youngest. He was born July the 8th, 1951. So we kind of grew up in a household with mother, father, and the kids. But my father died. I was about 3 years old. So that was about 1951. I think my brother Miles was about 6 months old. And he died of tuberculosis. And as much remembrance as I have of my father, my mother talked about him. He loved baseball. He was a concrete finisher, brick mason. And she said he helped build the UCTS school. And he also build bridges and things like that. He worked construction. And then after he died, we was pretty much raised in a single parent home, matriarch, my mother, better known as Lena Johnson, the fishing lady. And everybody knew her. And she used to work for a family in New Albany, a white family, that is, named Curtis Daniel. I forgot his wife's name, but they was kind of had money, rich, I guess you could say, because they used to own this place called Big Star. Yeah, Big Star, which was up on right off of Bankhead Street, up from Watson Grove. And they also had the Goodyear store out Bankhead West, and they owned another store in Holly Springs, Mississippi. So besides being a housemaid, my mother was one of the local bootleggers. So there was a lot of people running in and out of our house. And at times, weekends, my mother would have fish fries. And when they have fish fries, they play the music and somebody was doing the fish and my mother was doing the selling. And the kids would have to stay in the back room or either outdoors. And also, in those early years, school years, we used to have weenie roasts and they would be out in Wallerville and St. Mary, and we do the hay rides out there. I forgot how much we had to pay to ride, but we go out to Wallerville and St. Mary on Martintown Road. I was born in New Albany, Mississippi, in, well, Shands Hospital. At the time, it was Mays Hospital. I think Mays bought Shands out, and my doctor was Dr. Boswick, so I had a doctor there. And since we done went back there, like that nickname Stinky Johnson I got, well, my mother and a friend of ours, Miss Hazel Leeper, Miss Hazel used to kid me all the time, say I'm her baby, and she gave me that nickname, and they both, my mother and her, used to always say, "Bring my little stinky baby here." So the name kind of stuck with me. Well, all through my life, I still got it. I can't get rid of it. Mr. Clean can't even get rid of it. My early years of school was, like I said, we had one teacher for each class until we got to junior high, and then we'd go to different teachers. And well, we also had a library class there, Ms. Varnell Kimmons, I remember. She used to cover us when we was in, well, they call it, it was a study period, but we was in the library. I think we did more talking than studying in there. And on up through, it wasn't like school now. You have athletics for the younger kids. So, but in the summer, we call it like a park league. Coach Kennedy, Coach Ernest Dude Kennedy, he was over the baseball teams in the summer, and we had like older groups and younger groups, like Eagles and Cubs. I was in that group, and oh yeah, the younger group of guys were the Minnows and Tadpoles. So anyway, the Eagles and Cubs, we used to play against each other through the summer, and then at times we would mix up and play the county teams like Red Hill, who was coached by let me see, that was Red Hill, Mr. Charlie Woodruff, and in St. Mary it would be L.D. Berry, and we play against those guys. I'm not sure, I don't have a count on who won the most games between each other, but it was always, you know, who the best one. We played at, it's actually in Shady Dell Park, down below Bill Ford, UCTS. I guess it was still, yeah, it was still named Shady Dell then. During the summer, there wasn't a lot to do. We had, well, after they got the swimming pool in, you know, we swim all during the summer. And, well, before that, before we had a pool, we used to go swim in the Tallahatchie. And that's where I learned to swim down there. Tallahatchie River, kind of down where you go across Bratton Road. And if you look to the north, there's a waterfalls up there. That's where we used to swim. It was a good place and a bad place. And one of my friends and neighbors, he drowned down there. His name was Esther Barker. And that day he drowned, I was supposed to have been going down there with him, and something told me not to go, and I didn't go. So after he drowned, some of the guys come by my house, which I was living at the corner of Baker and Oak Street on the top of the hill across from Bill Ford. The Fitzpatrick's dad, named Mr. Brazil Fitzpatrick, he had a station wagon, and he used to load us up on Sunday and take us to Tupelo, swimming down on Green Street. And we do that every Sunday in the summer. And he was a great man, good father as far as I can tell. You know, anyway, he did things for the other kids and his kids. So when he loaded up his kids, he loaded up everybody else. And here we go to Tupelo and back. And during the Shady Dell days, which was like I say probably my junior high, I remember when they opened it up, a couple of the lifeguards was Robert Bolden and Larry Dykes, I believe. And they was lifeguards for like a couple of years. And I know, I think my sophomore or freshman year, they sent me to Alcorn State College down in Laurel, wherever it's at. And I took a class. It was another guy, Curly White and myself. And we went down there and we passed the test. Now, I ain't gonna say with flying colors, but we passed the test and became they considered us senior lifeguards and water safety instructor. And I taught swimming lessons for about 3 years down at Shady Dell. And I had a couple of lives that I saved, as they say. And I went on from there and I taught swimming lessons. And I remember Ripley called me up. And I went somewhere else, I can't remember the other place. But between Ripley and New Albany, I taught swimming lessons for about 3 summers. Of course, we operated out of our house. And my brother and I, Miles, Bob did too. We wasn't like the Dukes of Hazzard, nothing like that, because we had an old car like a 1951 Chevrolet, which would be unsuspectful of being a bootlegger, because my mother would always put fishing poles in the back, like we going fishing. Well, what we do is this guy, I remember the guy's name, in that crew, he sold the corn liquor by the gallon. It was also a place in Belden that we used to go to, and it was a place up at Hickory Flat we used to go to buy liquor. My mother, we'd get it, and my mother would put it in half-pint bottles and sell it. I think we sold it for like $1.50 for half pint, something like that. But pretty much any day of the week or the night, somebody always want to drink, and especially on the weekends when parties and basketball games be going on, and baseball games. Well, I know some other guys. My mother did too. She always carried a big purse, and she'd have a few bottles in it, and she'd sell the liquor out of her bag. I know it was a thing with the police department. I remember his name was, the chief of police named Merle Drummond. He was the chief of police. So it was kind of like a standing policy like you see on the TV, that the bootleggers work with the police to let them run we didn't have a steal, we just sold the liquor, And every now and then he'd come around and make a bust, like he's doing his job. And he did that. And I remember one time he took my mother to jail. So we had to go visit her in jail one time. But, she stayed a couple of days, then get out. I don't know what the bail was. But everyone would come by and get their little liquor and go. Sometimes they'd stay there and, we play music, people just sit around and talk and have fun. But that's pretty much the way it would go. So she did that, put us through school, and she was making more money selling the liquor than she was doing the housemaid job for the Daniels. So my mother did a good job on that. But my brother and I, we didn't take up that deal of being a bootlegger as we got older. I always lived in town, I say within a block or two of the Ford School. And of course, to me, thinking that's a good place of traffic for people to come, because, they come up to the football games when we had a football team, and also the basketball games. People come by, get their little hit and keep moving. And while we was in, no, that was before, that was after high school. But it wasn't a place like across the tracks down here for no one to hang out. Definitely legal in Tupelo. That's where we used to buy it mostly. I think we bought some in like Holly Springs, Marshall County. My mom loved to fish, and we used to take her everywhere she go to fish, and everybody would always see her catch, because like we lived on the hill, and she was known by that just by a lot of people because she was always going fishing. She'd go by herself, and a lot of times we'd be with her.
Where did she fish?
On the Tallahatchie River, and there's a place in Maryland called Spencer's Lake. That was like a pay pond. It was a catfish pond. She go to Tupelo. We take her. She knew places we didn't know. We just go where she tell us to take us. So that's why we take her. And places down in Ingomar, like at Pontotoc. But anywhere you could wet a hook, that's where she go fishing at. It was a guy named Mr. Lewis Norwood. He'd be out there too fishing a lot. He'd be casting, for bass and stuff like that. And I used to talk to him a lot about fishing, and he'd teach us how to fish, even when we wasn't fishing. And sometimes my mother, she mostly used a cane pole, but in later years she finally went to the Zepco, started using a reel too. So she could cast pretty good. When she have fish fries, she sells sandwiches, place like that. It would be like a place to hang out, like on a weekend, Friday or Saturday,
So she saved her money to put y'all through school.
Somehow she did, yeah. I used to, on the weekends, go pick cotton. We chop cotton like that, pull cotton, rake leaves, sell drink bottles, sell aluminum cans, mowed yards. And, as I got older, we kind of helped out like that, making our own money. Mr. John Darden, he was one of my favorite teachers. Like I say, he taught biology and lab. And I remember when he came from Mississippi Valley State College. And he was a good teacher, as far as I'm concerned. And I think that was about ninth grade when he came, maybe 10th. And anyway, he was one of my favorite teachers. You could talk to him, and he, any kind of questions, as far as I'm concerned, I would ask. And I think other students that he was there to help us out, give us guidance and things like that. And he also took me, when I graduated, became a pretty good baseball player. And my senior year, he took me down to Valley State for a tryout for baseball. Well, they liked what they saw of me, but they only offered me like a half scholarship, as they called it back then. And at the time, it's like I couldn't see how to finish paying for my college degree, so I didn't follow up on it and didn't have enough guidance. Well, like you could work your way through, I don't remember anybody telling me that, so I didn't take up on that with Valley State. I'm not sure the year he left, but we're still friends now. Every now and then we run across each other, because he married Miss Lois Darden. She was a foster then, one of our homie girls, as you call it. So he used to come back and forth even after he left, because his family ran a funeral service in Amory. I think our first stop was like Kentucky, for those caves up there. and we was working our way on up to Washington D.C., New York, to Niagara Falls, and of course we made the loop on around to in Canada, and what was it, Montreal? I think we went during the time they had the Montreal Fair or something like that. Yeah, and come back down to Miss Gibson's relatives. I think they was in Indiana, somewhere up Michigan, and made our way on back home. The growing years was three of us and my mother, and getting back on that, we did a lot of playing outside. You know, it wasn't a lot to do when it wasn't nothing to do, except during school days was our better times, because they'd have, well, like say football and basketball games, and the football games was also played right across the ditch at Shady Dell, where they got the soccer fields at now. And those times I stayed either right over the hill before you get to Shady Dell, and up on Booker. So when they have football games, we could just walk down the hill and watch the games from the hill, but sometimes we pay to go in, and that was the better times when we pay to go in, because you get to see everybody. We turned the bottles in to the grapeette plant. That was the name of it. It's right down at the end of Oak Street, but they done turned it into something else now. But it used to be called the Grapeette Bottling Company, Mr. Cola, and I forgot, that was their main drink, but you know, they went out of business. And the Coca-Cola Bottling Company, which is across the tracks here, downtown area, McGill's. I think the McGill's used to own that. And it's just a little piece from Bud Turner's. And that's where the Coca-Cola bottling plant was.
How much would you get for a bottle?
It seemed like a nickel or something like that. It wasn't much, but you get enough of them, it adds up. You could go to the movie, buy popcorn, you know, you got enough of them saved. It was a big deal to go to the movies, but we used to have to go to there's actually a side door, but we call it back door. The Cine Theater, I think it's called now. I'm not sure if it was the same name then, but we sometimes we could buy our tickets in the front, and then we have to go around the back and go upstairs to the movie. And along that line, it was before they probably integrated Miss Ruth Hill. It was she took a bunch of us students and came downtown, and we confronted the owner about sitting up in the balcony. And so we wanted to sit down, you know, like everybody else. And I think we made that happen. And what year that was, I don't remember, but it was a bunch of students. They had a window right there before you go really inside. And then a lot of times we just go upstairs and they come around and collect the money for the tickets then.
How would you get your popcorn?
I think we had to order it from the guy that come around and collected the tickets. Yeah, because we couldn't go to the concession stand. I came back and then I went back to being a lifeguard for the summer, and didn't have a job. Well, another job after that, and I wasn't going to college. So I'd been talking military, and at that time the Vietnam War was going on pretty good, and a couple of guys that I knew had got drafted, and of course they ended up in Vietnam and didn't last over there. So it's like, well, I didn't want to go in the factory, so I thought about joining the military, and I did. Actually, at first, I joined the Marine Corps, but they wouldn't get me in till way down the line, because I had got drafted, and so I didn't want to be drafted into the Army. So they couldn't get me in quick enough. Then the Navy recruiter said he could get me in like within a month or so. So that's what happened on that deal. Went and saw the world, and ended up in Vietnam anyway. And but I was on a ship, aircraft carrier, and I stayed over there for 7 months, and went back to San Diego, and ended up getting an early out. About an early out. I was supposed to have been in like 4 years, and I got an early out, and came back home, and ended up in the factory. So I said that wasn't for me. So I ended up going to Northeast and taking up the electrical trade for commercial, residential, industrial wiring. But I only stayed a year because I got bored. Went back in the Navy for 2 more years. Ended up in Jacksonville, Florida. So then I ended up going on another carrier going to the Mediterranean, and ended up in the midst of the Libyan war over there. Came back, got out of service. I had issues in the Navy with one of my supervisors, well, my immediate supervisor, and it was racial. So anyway, I got out of service on account of that. But I come back here to Mississippi, and then got the same thing going on here. Anyway, moving on up, I hung around for about 7 years doing electrical work, being a maintenance electrician, and went back to school, finished my degree, and got an associate's in electronics technology, which is associate's in science, they call it. And I did a co-op program with Tennessee Valley over in Muscle Shoals, Alabama. Stayed there for a summer, went back to school, finished up, and my mother got sick with cancer, so I was the only one around, so I ended up staying around. And eventually she passed in '82, and I decided there wasn't nothing to do around here, so I went back in the Navy again, and did 15 years, and eventually retired out of the Navy. Oh yeah, when I went back in then, I ended up in the Desert Storm, Desert Shield War, came back, and finally retired in '97. I was what they call air wing person. I was attached to a squadron. When I went to Vietnam, it was VF-53. I was what they call an aviation ordnanceman. I was one of the people that put the bombs, loaded the guns, and missiles on these aircraft. We had F-8 Crusaders, and we'd load them up and down. Yeah, that was my job on the aircraft carrier. During Vietnam, because it was really hot over there, we was floating around the Gulf of Tonkin, and that's why we did our missions from, kind of make circles, donuts in the Gulf of Tonkin, and they go to North Vietnam and drop their bombs and shoot their guns, fire their missiles, things like that. If they come back with the ordnance still on them, we have to download them and maybe send them back out again the next day. It's really like if you just took New Albany, all the people on it, and set it out in the water or an island, everything you want to need out there is on that ship, and that's the way we work, you know. Now we come in something like I ain't gonna say every 30 days, cause we spent 40 something days out there one time, but we go in port to replenish, as they call it, get food stores, munitions, anything, fuel, like that. And sometimes we'd get fuel just out there in the ocean. Another type ship was a fueler. It would come out and run their hose over to our ship, and we refuel, you know, in the ocean out there. I have 2 degrees from Northeast Community College. One's like the commercial, residential, industrial electricity. It's a 2-year certificate, and I also have an associate's in science, which is a 2-year degree. And I did take classes, at Troy State, like management classes, you know, when I was in port, had shore duty, stuff like that. Troy State, and I also completed Florida Correctional Officers class for Key West, Florida, down there, but I haven't done any correctional officer duties. I did some other stuff, but I didn't get into that because the pay wasn't all that good, especially starting out. So I ended up doing the electrical side when I got back here. And after that tour was over in '90, I went to Hawaii, pretty much doing the same thing as I did in Guam, flying, my job was called electronic warfare operator, and what we do is detect RF emissions, like radio emissions and stuff like that. And like when these planes getting ready to fire on another plane, we could pick up their radar, stuff like that. And when they transmitting from a ground site from missiles. So we was doing all that, and picking up submarines, stuff like that. It was I had to get a special background investigation with SCI clearance, which was way on up the ladder. And so anyway, they would call us 007 people because we was flying those type missions. And out of Hawaii, that's when it took me to Desert Storm, Desert Shield. And of course, being in Hawaii, you're considered in the West. All the countries over in the West we would go to, and we would do these type missions. Go up to Alaska. See, you go up to Alaska, Russia is right across. Well, you could sometimes walk across to Russia. And basically we was doing spy missions, and we did that all out of Hawaii. And then, of course, that's when the Gulf War came up too. Like I said, Desert Shield, Desert Storm. And I was flying combat missions all up in Iraq, all up through the Gulf of Persian Gulf, and Baghdad, all doing that when they started bombing and stuff. I got over there just right after they started bombing, so it was hot over there. William Keys, he's my oldest son. He's in Fayetteville, North Carolina right now. He's retired Army. And I got married in '86. Well, I was married in '86, and I had a daughter, Gabrielle Johnson, and me and my wife then, we didn't stay together too long. About 4 years we divorced, and I have 2 kids with her, and Gabrielle and Joshua. And Gabby is living in Atlanta. She's still working on being a doctor, but she's a doctor. She's probably doing intern stuff now. She may be past that. And Joshua, he's a truck driver. Anyway, I stayed married about 4 years. And then I married again when I retired out of the military. My wife now is Linda Johnson. We live in Pontotoc. And she already had a daughter when we got married, and she lives in Pontotoc. And me and her eventually had a child, a Miracle Johnson. That's her name. She don't supposed to be here, but anyway, she's like 21, working on 22, and she lives in Starkville, but she's not going to school. So I'm still married, and I've been married to Linda about going on 23 years in next month. My mother always played the radio. That's what we had before TV, and music and going to church, and we had music like that. And my mother used to play around. I don't know if you ever seen it or heard of it, but you could take a comb and a piece of paper and make tunes like, not a harmonica, but it sounds more like a kazoo. She used to play around stuff like that, and it was a place, well, called the Legion Place over on Martin Street that used to have bands over there. And I think Sam and them probably used to play back then. But, you know, we've been around a place where you got music all the time, jukeboxes, things like that, cafes. And, well, really what happened was, I think I was 10th grade, coming out of the 9th, yeah, going into the 10th, 10th, 11th, 12th, yeah. Bobby had went into the Air Force, my older brother, and he came back after about a year and a half, and he learned how to play bass guitar in there, and he played with a band when he was in Minot, North Dakota. That's where he was stationed at. So he came back and he wanted to get a band started. So you know how you kids used to beat on boxes and pans and stuff around the house. So I had the inkling to play drums. So he bought a set of drums from Dude Kennedy, and we started messing around at home in one of the bedrooms. And there was another guy named Clifford Williams. He played lead guitar. So eventually I got good enough to hold a tune, and it started off with Bobby, Clifford Williams, and myself, 3 guys, and eventually the name became Bobby Johnson and the Messengers. And one of those pictures out there is at my high school prom. We played for my high school prom. So anyway, we acquired some other guys during that time by my senior year, which was 67. Art Jerry Miller, he was the keyboard player. He was our band teacher also. And a guy from Tupelo named Alfonso Rachel, he was the alto sax player. And oh yeah, we had Roland Howe, Mr. Lee Russell Howe, his brother, which was killed in Vietnam. He used to play in the band with us too before he went to Vietnam. So that was basically our band when my high school year. Some of the other pictures is afterwards. Some of our best tunes was, well, rhythm and blues, like Mustang Salad was one of them I can recall. Midnight Hour, Wilson Pickett. We probably played Stand By Me, but actually all the songs from 67, I can't remember off the top of my head. Mr. Gibson, he used to play on a WNAU radio station on Saturday nights. And also, if you stayed up late, you could listen to WLAC out of well, I think they called it Nashville, Tennessee, but it was up around that area, and they played all the latest stuff, rhythm and blues. Seemed like WTUP comes in, but I don't remember the dates that I listened to it. It was a DJ named Johnny Weber. He used to play on that station. He was a DJ.
In Tupelo.
Uh-huh. He came back and he could play bass guitar. So he played bass guitar and did vocals. And so he taught me how to play drums. Actually, you know, it's in your head what you need to do, but when you get behind a set of drums, you're doing 3 or 4 things at one time, but you learn to keep a beat. So yeah, he came back and taught me how to play drums. And on that note, when I came back from service in '71, they had another drummer already, so I couldn't, not that I couldn't play drums. They already had a drummer named Paul High, and he's still around, and he was playing drums. So he taught me how to play, Bobby taught me how to play bass guitar. So I finally learned how to play enough bass guitar where I could do a set. And that's how I ended up playing drums and bass in the band. And nowadays, I'm like, we call it bass 2, because when I went back in service in '82 and come back, I had another bass player. So sometimes we use 2 bass players, and sometimes we don't, and then I play percussion. So that's what I mostly do now, but I still play bass. In fact, I play every Sunday in church. Growing up, I was a member of Hall Chapel, CME Church, on, is it Baker? Yeah, that's Baker Street. Down from Beasley Funeral Home, going towards Oak Street. And the thing about that is that was a Methodist church, and they kind of, I say pretty structured, where they do the same thing all the time. They did. But I went there, and we also went to other churches like Church of God, Watson Grove, and Church of God. It's another one by Bradley's Barbershop. Is that Church of God? But anyway, we did go to the other churches, but mainly grew up in Hall Chapel. I'm a Hill guy. I've been a Hill guy all my life, I'm gonna say. We call it the Hill Gang. You know, you can call it a gang, but it's nothing like you hear about real gangs. It's more like the hood, you know. And we had the different areas where the black people live around town. We had different names for them. Like, I lived on the hill, and that's like kind of before you at the bottom of Ford Hill, and up on top of the hill, all around through there, Baker and Booker Street and Gibson Street. We the hill people. And you got Goose Hollow, you got Dom, and you got North Side. That pretty much covers the people in town. Well, you got Stephen Quarter, you know, things like that. And that's about it. If I went, it was during the daytime. And sometimes when my mother come to town, we go by there and get one of those juicy hamburgers. But at night, no, the weekend, that was like not for young folks, you know. You either had to be an older person that's still in high school, or you done graduated. But that wasn't for the young people. I guess it wasn't the same as it was when you're on the outside looking in. But they had, you know, the jukebox, the food, people sitting around sipping and drinking, you know, because we didn't have too many places to go to. And but I went. I knew Mr. Bud Turner and his wife. They knew my mother well, and it was younger days. I remember before it went away. Mr. Wade Ivy, he had a taxi cab business, and it was also a cafe inside that building. But that building is not there now. But it was across the track, right across over here. And we just, sometime when we come to town, well, actually, Mr. Wade Ivy is my cousin, and they had a checkerboard used to be sitting out there, and people used to play checkers. You know, a lot of times you don't have the real checkers, and they end up using drink tops to, make the checkers. I don't remember it being a tea room, but I used to go to the barber shop right next to it. That was her husband's barber and cobbler shop, Mr. J.B. Gibson. Yeah, he used to fix my shoes and cut my hair. And, it's like the old days. Hey, you go in there, people talking, it's just like the movie Barber Shop. But that was the day. I remember that, but, we own that place now, Moses and Johnson Band. I think about all the times I came down and got a haircut, especially, and sit around there, sit on the porch drinking sodas. He sold we call them drinks, They wasn't no mixed drinks, just drinks like an orange drink, Coca-Cola, Pepsi. And sit there and sip after you get your haircut, because usually it's me and my brother, so we have to wait on each other. So we sit on the porch out there. I go by there now, even when the band not practicing a lot of times. Sometimes me and my brother go down there. Sometimes I go there by myself, just sit on the porch and have a real drink. I wasn't an athlete like my brother Bobby was, but I'm gonna say during the my like 5th, 6th grade years on up through, well, we had a football team, and I forgot what year it went out, but those were some of the best days as far as us, having something to do. And then we also had the basketball team. Now, I remember the old basketball gym across from Church of Christ. I remember it and them having like parties in there, but I couldn't go at the time. But I remember that, and I remember another time when I guess it had got dilapidated, and they was talking about tearing it down and building the gym we got now. We used to go down in there, run around as kids, but I remember that gym. And I remember when they built the gym we got now, we used to run around in it before they got it built. Dude Kennedy used to come up there and run us out of there. We were just getting in trouble. But we had some, after we had that gym built, we had some good ball players there. And we used to have some good games in there, especially against Ripley, Baldwin, Batesville. There was some other teams used to come, Holly Springs. Some good years on that. A dude probably started playing with us because he could play drums. I don't know if he played in another band before us, but I know I came back from service one time, and they had 2 drummers. I think it was Crow or James Price, and dude, I think they started out, something happened to Paul or else he left, and dude was playing. But dude, he couldn't, he didn't play the funky type drums. He was basically a straight drummer. So I think that's when they got Crow to come start playing with us. So they kept dude, and that's how he ended up in the band with us. I used to get my stuff either from Tupelo. It was two places. I can't think of the name of them, but I know it was on Green Street. I know where it is now, but it's not the same type store now. But and I'd go to Green Street in Tupelo, or either me and a couple of guys, we ride to Memphis, try to find the latest styles and stuff like that. I know Sam got one of our, maybe two of our old uniforms we used to have. I don't know. One of them is the blue one, look with the cape. I don't know if you remember seeing it. And then we had a gray one. We all dressed alike. Yeah, that was in the mid-70s, I'd say. We was decked out.
What do they look like?
Well, bell bottoms and kind of fitting. And we had a red shirt with a blue vest, and it also had a cape with it. Yeah, had a cape. Awesome. James Brown used to have a cape. Elvis had capes, and I guess it was the style back then during that time.
Did y'all have those made?
Yeah. A lady out of Tupelo made them for us. I can't remember her name. Back during our early days, even up through high school, the people that from the hill, you knew everybody. And if anybody stepped out of line right there, anybody in the neighborhood could tighten you up. So it's like, even though you're in your individual house, it's like a village, and you can just go around, but hey, everybody watching you. And of course, the Fitzpatricks, they lived always within a block of us. One time it was like, on the same block, they was up here facing the schoolhouse, and we was on Booker. That was Booker Street. We was staying down behind them, and then they moved out behind the schoolhouse, and one time they was down towards Shady Dell, and us, we always been close around neighbors, like that. And us, them, Mackenzie's, they stayed about a block. They stayed 2 blocks over. The Ivies, the Gibsons, well, Miss Gibson, the Fosters, Simpsons, everybody on the hill, and Ivies. I said Ivies, and some Howes. It's like everybody right there on the hill. My father had another daughter by another woman, but she lived in Baldwin. I know Miles mentioned it, and I forgot to say something. But she's, now how old exactly she is, I don't know. Mike might know. But she's old enough to be my mother, and she got a daughter. Me and her is about a year different. And we always, my mother, when I remember my mother used to take us over to Baldwin to see her. And we've always kept in touch. Everywhere I went in the military, I always end up with some guys that want to do music. We had a band in the Philippines. We used to play. And when I was down in Cuba, I got with some guys. We play, and I always play the bass. So music just still always been a part of my life. It's a guy, I've been messing around with some guys in Tupelo now. This guy's like 80 years old, and he play bass, but he kind of done, he said he done about got too old. And he used to play in a band, and some of the same guys used to play with him in a band. I know them, and they used to play in our band with us. The Dukes, those guys?
Yeah.
Okay, I know the drummer used to live on the corner of Main Street and Central, if I'm not mistaken, in that 2-story house. A lot of, I don't know what, well, anyway, we'd be coming to town, and a lot of times we could hear the Dukes practicing, or else he'd be practicing by himself, or both. And, the drums always interested me, but I didn't just know him personally. I forgot his name, but now Steve What's Steve Livingston? Steve Livingston, I got to know him pretty good, and he played bass and organ for our band, you know. And in that picture, you can see there's a couple of white guys sitting on the stage with us, you know, in the back. And I think it was a couple of those guys from the Dukes. You know, just the thought of like the Dukes and us, and Steve getting in the band with us, you know, you wouldn't think nothing like that would be. But like you say, people cross paths, and there's a lot of links to us. Me and my mother used to go through that cutoff. Actually, it's a cutoff to go to the north side of town instead of coming all the way down by the tracks and going across. And we used to go down through there. Of course, I knew some of the people that lived down in there. I don't know, have they mentioned Tip Mitchell? He was a real tall guy. He wore this long coat all the time and a pair of coveralls and a hat. He used to live off in there. You know, back in the day, it was like a little, like an alley road. You go right beside that house and go down off in there. That's how I remember it.
From Bankhead, you could go down? Okay.
Yeah. I think the interest really to it was from Bankhead, because it wasn't nothing you could drive across on that ditch down there. But I know another thing, it was a big pipe running across there. I don't know if it was drainage or water. So couldn't no car come down through from the other side, from Highland Street over there. It was at least 3 houses down there. All the teachers that I had, every one of them, they had your interests, you know, up front and trying to help you do better, things like that. Well, Alice Joyce White, she's my cousin, way distant cousin. She used to help me out after school doing homework and stuff like that. And like I said, you know, even I know the other places did it too, but on the hill, you know, it's like everybody is like a village. You know, if you had a problem, somebody can help you somewhere. And I remember I used to go over her house all the time, and she used to help me get my homework. I guess I wasn't the smartest cookie around, but I did graduate.